In this episode of the Butt Chronicles, we take a look at Beavis and Butt-Head, episode 22, Stewarts House.
Welcome to Industrial Industries World Radio's The Butt Chronicles.
You said welcome.
Oh God.
Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to the Butt Chronicles, your audio guide to everything Beavis and Butt-Head. And I'm your host, DJ Glowing Ice. And this episode is one that is highly controversial, and it's one of the banned episodes from Beavis and Butt-Head. I also want to tell y'all that I've got hit with a lot of bad allergies. I got body aches, I got a stuffy nose, I got a headache. The full gamut. It hit me today, and I was thinking, man, maybe I should just take a rest, but then I realized I'm not a wuss, alright? So if you hear my voice sounding a little stuffy, that's the reason why, so just giving you that kind of notice. But speaking of wusses, Stewarts House, it first aired on MTV on June 14th, 1993. So what happened in this episode that made it get banned? Well, let's check it out. We start in Beavis and Butt-Head's house as the boys sit on the couch. Butt-Head has the remote to the TV in his hand as he flicks through the channels. "This sucks," says Beavis. Butt-Head changes the channel a few more times until it falls into a channel advertising a live pay-per-view event called Death Truck. "Yes! Order it, dude," Beavis says to Butt-Head. "We can't. They locked us out after Steven Seagal month." "That sucks," Beavis says. The boys then look at each other as they realize something. Then they scream, "Stewarts House!" What you need to know about Stewart is that he's a slightly younger kid who lives in the neighborhood of Beavis and Butt-Head. Beavis and Butt-Head tend to abuse and bully Stewart, and Stewart, at this point, doesn't have any friends, so he sees Beavis and Butt-Head as his friends. Beavis and Butt-Head are now standing on Stewart's doorstep in front of his house. It's a nice family-style house with a white fence. Butt-Head rings the doorbell. "Who is it?" Stewart's voice asks from inside the house. The boys say their names as they look into the front door's peephole. From Stewart's perspective inside, we see the boys through the peephole as they both laugh. Stewart's voice once again from inside the house says, "My parents aren't home. They told me not to let you guys in the house, even if they are here." Butt-Head says, "Stewart, we'll just take this new video game somewhere else." The boys then start walking away from the door. Stewart then opens the door right away as he asks, "What new video game?" Which then the boys rush towards the door and get into the house. "Tail Gunner's Revenge," Butt-Head replies to Stewart. "Pay-per-view," Beavis says as they walk further into the house. Stewart, still standing by the open door, says, "I got a new video game you guys might want to play." All three boys are now sitting on the couch as they watch the pay-per-view on TV. "That stuntman's awful close to Death Truck," says Stewart. "Hey Ron, you put the parking brake on, right?" "Ah!" a man's voice says as crashing noises and sirens come from the TV. Stewart, looking shocked, asks, "That guy really dead?" "There's no blood," Beavis says. "This sucks. And Flesh Bowl sucked too," says Butt-Head. The boys get up from the couch and walk around Stewart's living room. Butt-Head walks to a statue in the corner and starts touching it. He then proceeds to pee on the floor. Beavis flicks on a lighter and holds it up saying, "Let's burn something," and then asks, "Think the carpet'll burn?" Stewart, getting worried as he sits on the couch, attempts to have the boys sit back down saying, "Hey, guys, look at this. Look, there's some blood. Check it out." Cut to the boys standing on each side of a chair with a brown cat sleeping on it. Beavis has a hose of a vacuum in his hand as Butt-Head says, "The cat and the..." Beavis starts up the vacuum and says, "Vacuum." Beavis then starts putting the vacuum hose on the cat as the cat then starts screaming. Stewart, still sitting on the couch, says, Guys, my parents really don't. Butthead shuts Stewart up by putting his hand over his mouth. Next, heavy metal music plays as Stewart is stripped to his underwear and hung up on a coat rack by the back of his underwear. Butthead is standing next to him and asks Beavis to hand him multiple things to stuff down the back of Stewart's underwear. Butthead says, sand, rubbing alcohol, cactus. Stewart screams in pain as Butthead puts the cactus down his backside. Butthead then asks for a blender. Butthead, with the hand mixer, turns it on, and Stewart holds his hands as if he's praying and says, "You guys," as Butthead then drops the mixer into the back of his underwear. Stewart screams in pain. "Good flying wedgie, dude," Beavis says. The boys then air guitar and mouth a rock riff as the blender continues to go on in Stewart's underwear. The next shot is Beavis and Butthead in Stewart's kitchen, as they're standing over the stove and getting a buzz from sniffing the gas from it. A disclaimer then comes on the screen and reads, "If you're not a cartoon, stove gas will kill you." Butthead says, "Hey Beavis, I heard if you fill the room with gas, then light a match, all the oxygen disappears and we'll get a killer buzz." "Cool," says Beavis. We then see a full shot of Stewart's house outside as the sound of a lighter starts flicking. An explosion goes off inside the house, as we see half of the front of the house blow apart. Stewart, still on the coat rack, falls off from the explosion. Beavis and Butthead are now standing in what's left of the kitchen after the explosion. Behind the boys is a huge massive hole where the wall was, now exposing the front yard outside. As the kitchen is still smoking, Butthead asks Beavis, "You get a buzz?" "I feel kind of like warm," Beavis replies. Next, Stewart's mom and dad come home to see Beavis, Butthead, and Stewart all sitting at the table in the destroyed part of the house. Mr. Stevenson says, "This is bad, boys, for a number of reasons. First is the trust factor. Stewart, we trusted you to stay home unsupervised. Now you violated that trust, didn't you?" Mr. Stevenson then turns to Beavis and Butthead and says, "Now you two. You came into my house and you blew it up. Luckily I got homeowner's insurance." "I bet you do," says Butthead. Then Beavis, Butthead, and Stewart all laugh. "You boys are so cute. Anybody want some lemonade?" asks Mrs. Stevenson, Stewart's mom. Stewart's dad turns to Stewart's mom and says, "Lemonade? Lemonade? We don't even have a damn kitchen. The doctor said you indulge him. Why do you think his only friends are miscreants?" Stewart's mom then bursts into tears and covers her face as she cries. Back to Beavis and Butthead at the table, as Butthead then laughs and says, "I'll have some lemonade." And that's Beavis and Butthead, Stewarts House. Now let's check out the music videos. The first music video is "You Might Think" by The Cars. As the singer in the video is superimposed onto a coat hanger, Beavis says, "Check it out, it's one of those air fresheners." "How come he stinks?" asks Butthead. Beavis asks how they do the things in the video, and Butthead says that it's called special defects. As the singer is now flying around as a fly in the video, Butthead says, "Honey, I shrunk that dorky rock star that wears a wig." And then they change it. Next is a cover of the song "Kiss" from Prince, which is done by Art of Noise with Tom Jones. The boys mention how Prince sure got old, and Beavis asks, "Hey Butthead, do you have to be, like, cool to rule my world?" "No, you just have to be stupid," Butthead says. He then says, "Kiss this," as we then see a shot of Beavis mooning the TV with his bare ass. Next is "I Wanna Rock" by Twisted Sister. Butthead says, "These guys are old." And then referring to a grenade in the video, Butthead says, "Where's the explosion?" Beavis says, "They never show the good stuff." Then the last music video, we have "The Majesty of Rock" by Spinal Tap. The boys headbang to it, and Butthead says, "These guys are good." And Beavis says, "Yeah, tap rules." And that's your music videos. Now let's get into the fun facts. This episode got banned for a few reasons. First off, the inhaling of gas of the stove, and then also blowing up the kitchen. This episode marks the first appearance of Stuart Stevenson, and a further detail of this character, he's kind of a run-on character of the series, kind of a staple, really. And Stewart is slightly younger than Beavis and Butt-Head, and he thinks the boys are his best friends, and he's always excited when Beavis and Butt-Head hang out with him. Beavis and Butt-Head tend to bully him, take advantage of him, and go to his house to watch pay-per-view TV, among a lot of other things. How Stewart looks physically is he's shorter and he's fatter, and personality-wise, he's into nerdy things like Dungeons and Dragons. Stewart has blonde shoulder-length hair. He usually wears light blue shorts and a black t-shirt with the band name Winger on it. And in this episode, not future episodes, but just this first debut of Stewart, he has a much more deeper voice than later episodes where his voice gets higher. During the original run of the series of Beavis and Butt-Head, from 1993 up to 1997, Stewart was voiced by Adam Welsh. And in the 2011 series, he was voiced by Mike Judge. Adam Welsh was hired on, but something happened and it's not quite clear, but due to some personal reason, Adam Welsh wasn't brought on to play Stewart again. And now, let's get into the story of how Winger wound up on Stewart's t-shirt. It's not just because Winger was just drawn out of a hat. There's actually a backstory behind this, so let's get into that. So, the reason why Stewart wears a Winger t-shirt isn't just because it's a softer band compared to what the boys wear, which is AC/DC and Metallica, but it started on episode 20 with the Butt-Head experience, where one of the music video segments in that episode, the boys watched the music video 17 by Winger. And the boys basically trashed the video and the band in general. Word got back to Mike Judge, the creator of Beavis and Butt-Head, that Kip Winger, the guy from the band Winger, didn't like what was said, and he threatened to sue if they kept bad-mouthing the band. Years later, we find out that Kip Winger wasn't going to sue. It was all misinformation that was given to Mike Judge. So Mike Judge was under the impression that Winger was wanting to sue him. So Judge, being the cool guy that he is, he decided, hey, I'm not going to badmouth the band, but I'm going to do something even worse. So what Mike did was make Stewart, the fat and nerdy kid in the series, wear a Winger t-shirt. Which technically, it's not bad-mouthing the band. Years later though, Winger and Mike Judge have buried the hatchet after Judge found out that Winger never threatened to sue. So that's the story of Stewart and why he wears a Winger t-shirt. Also, as we've seen Stewart's dad in earlier episodes, this episode is also the first appearance of Stewart's mom, Mrs. Stevenson. She's well-mannered and naive to most of any bad doing by Beavis and Butt-Head, as she plays the role of a good mom and housewife to a T. She has blonde hair and is typically wearing a pink-collared long-sleeve shirt and a light blue ankle-length dress. In this episode, though, she's seen wearing a tight pink and black exercise outfit, exposing her breasts very nicely, as she wears a sweatband around her head. Mrs. Stevenson is voiced by Tracy Grandstaff, who also does the voice for Daria Morgendorffer. This episode was actually released uncut on the Too Dumb for TV VHS tape. And it also aired on the world's most dangerous Beavis and Butt-Head episodes Maranathon in August of 1999 on MTV. Although Stewarts House was aired again in this Maranathon, the thing that was edited out in this version was everything about inhaling the gas from the stove. Stewarts House is the 17th episode of Season 2 of Beavis and Butt-Head, and it's the 22nd episode overall. And IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, gives Beavis and Butt-Head, Stewarts House, a 7.5 out of 10 rating. Now I'll give you my review. I never seen this episode before up until today, and seeing that it was a banned episode, I probably wasn't introduced to Beavis and Butt-Head at the time it first aired. So, and I missed out on the Maranathon in 1999, so visiting this episode for the first time was a real treat. I really liked this episode. And there's just a lot of stuff that's happening, and everywhere you turn there's a joke. There isn't really any downtime or any kind of boring parts in it. And the music videos, they were decent. They weren't the best music video segments, but it was decent. And the whole episode itself is solid. And it's one of the bad boy episodes, the band episodes. So this has a bit more spice to it that I do like. I love these band episodes. They're great. So with all that being said, it was new to me, freshly seeing it for the first time. I'm going to have to give this one an 8 out of 10. It's really great. Some parts aren't as funny. They're just downright mean, but it's good. I like how Stewart's dad talks about how his interaction with Stewart and how he's telling, like, the boys blow up this house, like his whole house is ruined, and he's just going to sit there and talk to Stewart like, all right, Stewart, you broke this trust now. I'm sure you went to school with kids that were very spoiled like that, and their parents never punished them or anything like that. But then Stewart's dad turns to Stewart's mom and tells Stewart's mom that she coddles him and whatever, but he does the same thing. So they're both kind of just horrible parents, and not in a bad way, just horrible as they don't, they raised a loser, a wimp, a wuss. So, yeah. So there you go. Beavis and Butt-Head, Stewarts House. I give it an 8 out of 10.